I introduced jQuery into some system which was a legacy system, and everybody was overwhelmed on what is this. The interview tries to replicate what you actually doing your whatever you're doing on the job. The values round is very important. Atlassian values is something which we take it to the heart. The interesting part is if you apply at Atlassian, they'll give you a 5 pager or a 6 pager
Okay.
that gives you about how to prepare for Atlassian. It's a very comprehensive document. Can you
Mhm.
write a testable code? Can you write a code which can be tested easily? Can you
Mhm.
write it an iterative format? Can you write a code which can be scaled easily? How do you seek a problem? How do you talk to other people within the company? Design patterns is one thing which is very understated.
Hello everyone. Today we have a very special guest, Shivani. She has been also my colleague in Flipkart basically. Currently, she is working as an engineering manager at Atlassian. She has previously worked with companies like I said, like Flipkart, Morgan Stanley. And in this video, basically, we are going to drill down into the senior front-end interview process at Atlassian, not just limited to that. We are also going to cover the myth around the cracking is enough in order to grow in the career, or something has to be done once you join the company. So Shivani will be talking about the role, responsibility, challenges from the shoe of an engineering manager for a senior front-end developer. So without wasting time, let me call Shivani on the stage basically and share the eye-opening insights. Hey Shivani, how are you doing?
Hey Chirag, how are you?
Good, doing
I'm
great,
doing
great,
good.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad to have you once again. Basically, I remember one we recorded a system design interview basically, and that got very much popular, and people are liking it
Yeah.
like anyone, right?
Right. Thank you for having me. And I'm really happy to be part of it. You're doing a great job in all the system design interviews and preparing them. And in fact, I have seen your videos for if I need some help, especially. I think one was with Muskin. That is something I really didn't know how something like a, um, what was that? That was a code
Code
editor or something.
sandbox,
Yeah,
yeah, code
yeah, code
sandbox, yeah.
sandbox. How would it work? And I really got excited to that from that video. So I'm
Glad to
also
hear
learning.
from my
Yeah.
engineering manager, yeah, and my colleague. Okay, great. My viewers definitely wanted to know more about you, so why don't you give you a brief journey from different companies and what you're doing right now?
Sure. So I have a total of like 11 years of the industry experience. I started not as a front-end developer, but as a full stack developer. And within the full stack, I remember um, within the initial years, I had jQuery. I introduced jQuery into some system which was a legacy system, and everybody was overwhelmed on what is this? There was something like a tree or a diner tree kind of a JavaScript library, which I used to build a very beautiful tree. And people thought that how did I build this in the JavaScript? That was like 11 years back when I was like just entered as a grad. And that is where my front end journey started. I went into like more into the front end areas. And the major part or career pivot was Flipkart for me, where I joined as an SDE1 for pure front end and not dealing with any of the backend stuff to get into details of it. And there has been a journey of 7 years there where I grew from like an engineer to a tech lead and now an engineering manager and within Atlassian. Yeah,
Awesome, awesome. I can vibe with the journey that you have talked about from jQuery to seeing the word what is today at a as a front end,
right,
right? And doing some crazy stuff on the web. It gives an immense pleasure, right? Awesome,
right.
awesome. So with that, like let's start with like people sharing some interview journey. Say suppose someone wanted to get into the Atlassian, like what are the things basically a person should take care of or a person should know about the entire process?
Okay, so first of all, I definitely would like to say that it's the interview tries to replicate what you actually doing your whatever you're doing on the job. There's some level of preparation definitely needed to be on top of the technologies and everything. I do agree, but the most important part of this, what were you doing when you were given a job, and that is wherein all these rounds, different rounds that Atlassian takes, there are coding rounds, system design rounds, management rounds, or other rounds. They try to gather that same information that if given a problem within Atlassian, can you actually solve it for us or not? So my journey, interview journey, was also very similar. There's not much difference between an engineering management interview and the front end engineer, senior front end interview, because they are almost at the same level. And the only difference is the coding round. You don't have coding round for engineering management, rest is same. So like the
Oh,
focus, the interviews are same. The focus is on like managing and leading more than like actually doing it on the job. And on if you're a senior front end engineer, then the focus on getting the job done, as well as from a tech perspective, the ability to get the code writing, not just design, is something which becomes important. So that's the difference between a management and a technical, because it's ultimately an engineering manager, right? So engineering
yeah,
has to
you
come.
have to be a combo of three-person, a person who understands business, person who understands tech, and the people management. You are the
Right,
combo, full pack
right.
combo.
I think jack of all, master of none, maybe.
No, 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 no. I can relate it. Maybe many people who are in a lead sort of thing, they may be thinking about, oh, now let me get into the engineering manager role because I can skip the technical coding around over there. Okay, jokes apart
Doesn't work
from
that way.
just
I
joking.
I literally wrote the code when I gave interview. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so why don't you share some of the like what are the different interview rounds that happens at Atlassian for a senior software or you can say the front end engineer basically, and what are the different
Okay.
expectations that we have?
Okay. So it starts with, I think, two coding rounds. So there are two coding rounds because there's one something called, we call it as a browser coding, and one is a JavaScript coding. So with the browser coding, you generally develop a page, build CSS and JavaScript, basic of JavaScript that is covered there. In a JavaScript coding round, you specifically build a library which is like kind of can be used everywhere. It's like a singleton pattern or something. You're using some design patterns over there. So a little bit of advanced version wherein focus on CSS and developing a page won't be there, but core JavaScript is something which would be tested. So it starts with that, and then if you clear that, you jump onto the third round, which is a system design round. It's all about you're given a problem statement and you solve it. It it can be a P40. P50 is called as a senior engineer. P40 is called as an associate, and you can and P60, and all can be given same questions, but the level with which they solve is different at different levels. The
Right.
expectations, the problem statements are mostly the same, but the approach to them might differ based on your experience, right? So that is how
Definitely.
it happens. Also, once you clear all these rounds, you have two more rounds, which are people-specific rounds. One is the values round, and one is
Okay.
the final one is the hiring manager round or the management round. The values round is very important. Atlassian values is something which we take it to the heart. It's very, very important that we cater to all the values, and the person is a values fit. Um, the values I can tell, like be the change you seek is one of the values. Like
Mhm.
you bring the change. If you're trying to, you don't expect the others to bring in the change. That is one of the values. The other is DFTC, which is don't fuck the customer. So you really don't you have to care for your customer the most. So these kind of values, open company, no bullshit, be open about everything. So are these values really coming out? That is something which is taken into consideration. And a final management round which talks more about what has your experience been in the past, what
Mhm.
have you done, what kind of problems you have solved. And also it's kind of a two-way round in management round where I as an engineering manager see whether this person or the capabilities is a fit for a team or not, or maybe I know some other team where this person can be a fit,
Mhm.
or and for a person to know about what's happening and what the person would be doing within the interview. So it's a kind of a conversation that happens mostly wherein I check the history of the person rather than what they can do.
Mhm.
So that's how these are all the process. Fairly
Because you have
simple, right?
lot of learning from your history which people ignore sometimes, right? Your
Yeah.
future is sometime driven by your history, what you have done. By the way, I personally like the values well around that you have talked about, right? There are almost every companies, even if we talk about Flipkart was having the like values, if I remember, ABC sort of thing, right? Even Microsoft, even all the companies have that. But validating that you are going to be adhere to those values is very important in the starting, because culture values is something which should matter to the companies who wanted to grow like anything, and I really
Right.
appreciate and respect that.
Right, right. This is very important because it's kind of a culture fit round as well.
Mhm.
Like because values are our culture right now,
Correct.
and so some teams, like some companies, I think there's a culture fit round that happens at Flipkart and at Atlassian. It's a values fit round, but it's ultimately that, are you fitting into the system? We have so many people here. Are you fitting into that? Um,
Awesome,
yeah.
awesome. Let's dive and lighten something in terms of interview questions. Why don't you talk about some of those high level questions, or something in terms of what are the expectations, by giving some examples, like in different rounds. Probably if you have to ask something, what are the things that people should take care of, keep an eye on that.
Okay. The interesting part is if you apply at Atlassian, they'll give you a 5 pager or a 6 pager
Okay.
that gives you about how to prepare for Atlassian. It's a very, very comprehensive document, and you really don't have to like look again because I'll give you an example. If somebody asks you to build Netflix per se,
Mhm.
there can be multiple answers to it.
Correct.
You want to build one Netflix page or a complete architecture, backend and front end combined? How, where do you want to zoom in? Where do you want to zoom out?
Mhm.
All these things are very confusing when you specifically grow in your role. And a senior engineer has some insight onto what happens on the backend as well. They have been working on Node or at least an API gateway or some layers there, right? So, and probably at the backend layer as well, for JavaScript is everywhere.
Yeah.
So that confuses people. And that is wherein, like for a system design interview, I definitely expect the people to ask a lot of questions
Mhm.
that where do you want to deep dive into? What is the expectation from this problem statement? That can I go in breadth first and then you let me know which depth should I cover
Mhm.
and how much
Yeah.
depth should I cover? So all these are part of like system design. For the coding interviews or the coding browser and JavaScript rounds that we call, a lot of it is a straightforward problem, like build this page. If you have any questions you can ask, like I get and there, as I told you, that they will be on based on real time environments and what we do at Atlassian. We can ask you, we can bring in some page from Jira and we'll say, like, I am on a Jira developer, so I'll say that how do you build this page in general?
Mhm.
How do you put components? Are you thinking in that modular way? So you must have noticed we don't have a DSA round, which is a specifics round, because and the reason with that is it's covered in all 3 rounds. When you're doing a browser interview, then are you uh, uh, going with that modular approach? Are you actually taking into considerations all those algorithms? Like, can you apply those algorithms? I won't ask you maybe what is LRU cache directly or something very straightforward.
Yeah.
But if there might be a problem statement that can directly, the answers to it might lie on, like, uh, who are the 3 people who have commented on your probably a Jira ticket, or who are the people who are the watchers of it, so list of it, and all those. There are a lot of scenarios there. So while solving those problems, are you applying those data structures and algorithms correctly or not? So that is how it's covered in all 3, mostly in system design, but and the JavaScript round might or may not be, but can be considered on the browser coding round as well,
Got
especially when
it.
it deals with like smaller data structure, not system design per se,
Mhm.
but the data structures are something which can be considered there.
Awesome. So you have already answered, like there is no explicit round of as per se DSA, but there are something which you use somewhere in the web application when you are developing. Those problem solving question can be anywhere in these rounds, and you should have
Yes.
expectation, not as per se DSA as in data structure, but as in problem solving
Yeah.
things as a part
Yeah.
of JavaScript. Awesome. I
So,
think,
so
yeah.
along with that, there are very like data structures is like one aspect. The second aspect that I can think of is testing. Can you
Mhm.
write a testable code? Can you write a code which can be tested easily? Can you
Mhm.
write it an iterative format? Can you write a code which can be scaled easily? right? All these are factors which are like kind of implicitly there in their questions. But I don't think they are asked directly, or there is a separate round for all these. Yeah,
Fair enough. I think the way you have portrayed this all story is very important, where people should have a perspective. Like getting into the code snippet, getting into the granular thing is one part. But the high level as a senior, when you go for an interview, there are many other things which are being judged. It's not about just syntactical sugar. Probably you are stuck. You can seek for the help or Google it out in order to get the syntactical values. But what
right,
matters is a bigger picture behind the scene.
right, right.
I think that is very important, as you said, and I think we you already talked about system design. Yeah, it is very important aspect of the interview round, and you have a specific round for that as well, right?
Yep.
So, any as you said, Netflix one of the example. Anything else as in popular questions or popular thing as a system probably that can be asked in a system
And
design round?
I don't want to share any questions explicitly.
Not
There might
explicitly, but
be,
in general, in
but I
general.
can give you an idea. I can give you an idea, definitely. Build probably. I'll open Jira and I can ask N questions about it.
That
I'll
is
just open Jira. What I see is a panel, a left pane,
yeah,
which has some epics onto it, a right pane wherein it has a history and the list of user stories when you're planning a sprint. How do you build that?
correct.
Very simple. You go into a particular user story or a bug or a ticket, whatever you call, and then open that ticket up. There's a page that comes up. How do you build that? Um, they, I can go on and on, but
Yeah,
there is.
which is true,
So
which is true,
these are
as you
the,
said. Yeah.
yeah. So also taking into consideration, can you make some common components like,
Mhm.
can you go into, if you want to build analytics for the whole system, how would you build that?
Mhm.
So like these are the kinds, as far as I remember, that are
Which is
that
fair
can be.
enough. Yeah, as you said, like if you open one system, there are so many system design questions which can come into that. It's more around, are you prepared for that? And obviously, the
Right,
experience itself talks about, are have you prepared for interview or you have already worked upon those things. So
right.
I think awesome. So now one part we have already covered, which is okay, how to get into the company. We get into the company. Now the story is bit different. Like as I can see, Atlassian try to bridge that gap between the interview and your work, but many company are not able to do that, right? And where you get a set of predefined question, very popular question on the internet, you go practice, crack it, and what you do after the job is something different. I'm glad that Atlassian is actually trying to bridge that gap. Okay, even like you cannot assess everything in the interview. There are many things which you have to do on a job which are not assessed in the interview. Do you want to highlight some of the things which a person as a senior software engineer should keep in mind when they join after the interview?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I have P50 or senior engineers within the team, and the interview process is what I talked about. But the moment they come, there are multiple aspects. They first have to understand the problems in depth. What we talk in interviews is mostly on a higher level, and the requirements are something more specifically that we give to you. You ask a question and you get an answer immediately from the interviewer, right? That
Yeah.
doesn't happen on a real system. You have to first find out who is the right person who can solve, who is there a fuzzy problem, or the problem itself is defined or not. um,
Mhm.
do you have the ability to look at a system and find problems onto that, and
Mhm.
then like talk to the PM and talk to the other people, business and everyone, and understand your user better.
Mhm.
As I told you, one of the values is like, do not, your customer is the utmost priority, right? So are you understanding your customers well? Are you
Mhm.
are you understanding your product well? So kind of covered in your system design, where you're given a problem statement on how are you understanding that small problem better, but actual problem is much much bigger. There might be hundreds of edge cases that you might be taking care of. Like I can definitely, there was one person who got really overwhelmed when I told them that there are 260,000 customers of Jira and each customer is a company. Understand
Yeah.
that? And you have to cater to all of them with your feature.
Correct.
And this one and the the cohort of companies is not one. They are not shoppers, or they're not doctors, or they're not. It starts from healthcare to software development to security to NASA to governments, everywhere. The same product
Yeah,
is being used. And you are building that one feature for everyone. And
true.
do you see, is this the right UI which can cater to all the needs? Is this the right piece that you're writing, the most efficient piece that you have?
Mhm.
Right. And more important problem that I think you never directly solve in a front end interviews is the scale problem. That are
Mhm.
you working with that scale and performance? You've built one piece very nicely in your interviews, that but that one piece has to fit together in that whole big system and has to work with the performance and reliability. You have that metric that it should not cross, otherwise everybody would be paged.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
So that is, I think you also know it very well within the industry, right? So that is something which is different than the interviews, but the capabilities are the same. If you have a
True.
capability to solve the smaller problem with time, if you can solve a smaller problem with 1 hour of time, you can solve a bigger problem with a more amount of time, given how big the problem is. How do you work well with others is also something like, how do you
Mhm.
seek a problem, how do you talk to other people within the company, right? So all of those aspects are something which are more which nobody asks you in an interview. And even you can always fake or say that, okay, I work with everyone, but it's on the job that are you doing it or not.
Correct. I can relate
So
it very well. So, as you said, sometimes when you are actually thinking about, oh, the scale may not be that direct factor in the front end, but I can relate when I joined my current organization, the first feature which I shipped went well, very well to the first station. In the second station, boom. Because there are many other factors that you have to think about. Oh, if the same feature goes to the China, there are a lot of policies that actually exist, right?
right,
There are localization, internalization, and number of factors which come into the picture when your feature has to go global, right?
right.
And you start seeking that impact, which obviously talking about random things in interviews and when you actually face those things in the at your job are way two different problem.
I can share an example from 6 years back that I recall. I joined as an SD1 in Flipkart. The first task that I was given was, I think, paginator, to build a
Mhm.
pagination component. The pagination component, it's clear cut a system design question that is asked. I built that component. The component was very well done and everything. There were around, say, I don't remember it clearly, but say there are 9 pages which had this
Mhm.
pagination, but 8 used the page-based scenario and one
Mhm.
used cursor-based scenario, and I didn't
Oh.
take it into account. And that broke. My first user story, I deploy it on production and it breaks Flipkart. Seller side. So yeah, so these things happen. So that is how when it comes that do you, and the reason was nobody was aware on the
Yeah,
development area that this page existed, but customers were using it. So again,
definitely.
getting that knowledge on what your customer is doing, again coming back to that, that having that customer insight is very, very important. So at that time, I think Flipkart was also very much in the startup phases. Now
Yeah,
it's all control.
as you are talking about very cool and interesting topics, I got one thing I wanted to share from my experience, which I have seen in the industry. Say suppose somehow your zero plus zero is equal to one, and it is working in the system, right? There will be damn some reason why that is working. Do not go and blindly correct it. Do zero plus zero cannot be one. It can be one on circumstances and the environment in which that code is sitting. So that is something which I have realized over the period of time, where you feel confidently this is going to work, this is wrong. And if it is working, right, do double check. Probably every zero plus
Yeah.
zero one doesn't to be false
Especially in bigger
equation.
organizations, this becomes very important where the code base is like 20 years old. Like Jira is 20-year old. I think
Wow.
the age of people who are working on Jira is also 20 years old. Interestingly, they've joined as grad and mostly around the same age and solving the problem that existed like many, many years back.
Yeah.
So um, the code was for some reason written in that manner for some reason, and you have to figure it out, go back, ask, search for the dogs and everything. But yeah, you have to like double, triple check on every point.
Yeah,
That's
in
very
my last,
important.
as you said, in my last hands-on, we were celebrating 30 years celebration for people in MSN, which are who are in my team. And I was like, okay, 30 years. So that happens, as you said. So the code and the software, the application that is way long, has seen all the edges and the versions
Stages.
of the web, stages of the world, right? In the terms of the
Yeah.
technology, basically. Awesome.
Yeah.
So one last advice that you wanted to share with people who are preparing for the interview, especially say suppose for Atlassian, right? So what are the expectation, or what are the things that they should basically keep eye on in order to make this happen?
So solve problems on production as many as you can. Uh, from a personal experience, whatever have been, I talked about the pagination, right? It it's so crystal clear in my mind because I did it on production. If I would have gone wrong somewhere while practicing an interview, I definitely would not have remembered. So,
Mhm.
as many, try to apply whatever you have learned in your scenarios. Especially, I think design patterns is one thing which is very, very understated. Especially in the front end world, I have not seen people using design patterns a lot into the front end area. So, that's one definite suggestion that I have. Second is stick to the code. Like generally, as you grow into the senior engineer, and if you have the aspirations to be into the tech area, be close to code. The co-
Mhm.
I always tell this to my team as well. The code speaks the truth. The ultimate truth is the code. People might say this happened, that happened. The code is saying that this is the logic. It's a language ultimately,
Yeah.
and it's speaking out something, right? So you have to understand and be on top of it what your system is saying. Uh, Try to solve problems proactively rather than somebody coming with a problem statement to you.
Mhm.
That is another point. um, that would definitely, because you come across a lot of stages and a lot of problems. While you're solving one problem, you'll figure out 10 more problems exist, and maybe you're not able to ship them into production, but at least a discussion, triggering those discussions within your groups, maybe external or internal within the company, can trigger those thoughts on how you can solve these problems.
True.
So understanding the language, understanding the design patterns, and finally understanding how to apply those into the system. These are the three core areas, and then taking ownership within your own company.
Mhm.
That itself solves a lot of problem. So
Mhm.
that's the overall like part which will get to the successful, apart from a lot of videos that are out there which talk about what you how to crack interviews. So
True, true,
these are the
true.
things which people don't talk about. They say that okay, learn DSA, learn this, but apply those DSA.
Which
I
is very
I
important.
I changed this question of like least recently used cache to something which is most recently used, and people get stuck. Let me tell you, people get stuck really bad, and they know that this is LRU cache. They name that word and they say that they've practiced it, but they're not able to apply it. So that is where understanding is more important than just knowing the problem, reading the answer. Rather than reading the answer, try to apply it. It might take a lot more time than just reading out the answers, but it'll give you more insights of solving 10 more problems ahead of you.
Very well
So,
said. Very well said. I think people who are watching this, they will get a sense. Cracking an interview is okay, but if you have to grow, these are the things that you have to apply at your work, and eventually you will see that you don't have to practice this, especially for your interviews. It's just that a high level understanding and high level recap of things what you have done is more than enough in order to crack any interviews in future. I
yeah.
think
Yes,
that.
Chirag, I definitely tell this also to people that you always complete one development cycle within the same company. You can switch multiple companies at multiple point in times, but at least whatever you have built, take it to production and
Correct.
get the feedback of how users are using it. At
Hmm.
least that minimum flow you should always complete within a company. If you're not completing, then your experience is not enough. If you're not getting onto that feedback cycle, your experience is not enough to go into the other company. I think you'll repeat the same problems because you don't even know that there are some problems that existed until users tell you sometimes.
Which is very true. Very,
Yeah.
again, very well said. I think this was an awesome discussion, Shivani. I think whoever is watching this video are going to get a lot of insight. Obviously, after that, hopefully you will see many people are getting into the Atlassian at a very high expectations and with very good preparation, because they know what exactly basically is the expectation. No longer that FOMO in terms of, oh, just mug up, get prepared for the interview and come on. So
Yeah.
you will see the real world problem statement at Atlassian. Great, great,
Yeah.
Great to
I
have you today, Shivani. Yeah.
thank you so much, Chirag. I wish all of them all the best, whoever applies to Atlassian. There are many positions also open, and I see. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So thanks everyone. Thank you, Shivani. See you again. Bye bye.
Bye bye.